All right, welcome to our May review of last month's real estate numbers. And joined as always here with the incredible Brenna Harper with Land Title. And thankfully, Land Title, they care a lot about the data, they care a lot about the research. So they have a group of individuals that actually collects the data so that we can analyze and interpret what's going on with our real estate market. So for those that don't know Brenna, and you should, but go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thank you, Matt, for that introduction. Hello, my name is Brenna Harper. I am a sales rep with Land Title Guarantee Company, covering primarily Lodo Highlands area and some of Cherry Creek. So happy to be here and talk about what's going on in the market and maybe what we can expect or think about what the rest of the summer is going to look like.
Yeah, so again, we're taking a look at these numbers to kind of get an idea where we're at. We're not necessarily making predictions. Sometimes I step out on a limb and we'll make more predictions than Brenna maybe feels comfortable with, but that's just me. And this is my Facebook page. If you're watching it, then I assume you care my thoughts on it. So
Yeah, you do.
So one thing that I just want to point out, if you take a look at the ticker at the bottom line here, you may notice that you don't see the 212-degree website in that. So some news for us, right, is at the 212-degree team have decided now to join forces with the Ben Kinney team, with Place. It's still with Keller Williams. I haven't changed offices or changed brokerage, but joining a team that really has a lot of similar values, that cares a lot about the client experience, and already has some really amazing tools and resources. So, if you see that, that's the change. Should overall bring some really amazing things here for our clientele. So, if you see that, right, that's just kind of the change for those of you that pay attention to the bottom line ticker there. So, well, before we jump into that, right, Brenna, tell us a little bit about kind of what we're seeing here from the real estate numbers.
Perfect. Do you want me to share my screen or just kind of an overall?
Just an overall, if you want to click the button to share, and then I can bring that up.
Yeah. So what I think is interesting as I try to multitask here and share and talk at the same time. So we had a 14% increase in active inventory, which sounds like a lot when you just say it month over month. That's a pretty big jump. But because we're in such a deficit, that's only about just over 300 homes for all of Greater Metro Denver. Now, I'm not complaining. I would much rather have a positive number on that active inventory than it continue to go down. But just keep in mind, it can sound like, oh, we're up double digits month over month. We're, off to the races. And that's not quite the case when you put it in perspective of a numeric value there at just over 300. And as we talked about last time, just a quick reminder, as we're looking at year over year numbers, you do have to keep in mind that we were in the middle, in the swing of, or in the throes rather, of COVID last month or last year, those couple months or weeks in April when we weren't allowed to do showings at all before we were deemed a essential business and got back. All things considered, we still had a great year. We still had a great April even in 2020, but some of these numbers you'll see are like 97% improvement, and you just kind of have to take that with a grain of salt as we're looking at it. The market conditions and just the world conditions are quite a bit different than they were, thankfully, this time last year. So just keep that in mind as we're going through some of this. But we broke out inventory specific to different county. So as we're looking at this, Jefferson County was the one that had the biggest increase of up 40% month over month, which is still only 400 units. And as most of you know, Jefferson County is an extremely popular county here. So they definitely need the inventory, but I don't know that we'll see a massive increase in or a massive back off in how competitive it is, because I feel like there's been people that have honestly been pushed out of Jefferson County that with a few more homes on the market, they're just jumping right back in because it's such a desirable place to live. So we are seeing numbers up across the board there as far as inventory goes, but nothing that's going to move the needle a massive amount, but we're going in the right direction. And, we'll kind of talk about some other factors that may come into play here, but just kind of keep that in mind. Something a little bit surprising is that Douglas County has surpassed Denver County for the average sales price for a detached single family home. 777, 717, say that a couple times fast. So that's pretty remarkable that, first of all, that we are in the high sevens for an average price point. And Denver County has historically been the most, the highest price point, the most popular. So Douglas County has given Denver a run for their money. So a new big dog in town there for sure. And, this part of what we want to talk about is, will we sustain this pace through the summer when we had an earlier start? So typically we don't see the number of sold units reach over 5,000 until we get to about May or June, but both March and April had over 5,000. So do we have the inventory to sustain it? Are buyers going to stick around? This is the most common time in the summer months where people are renewing their leases. Are they just going to stick it out for one more year and then come back later? Are they worn out from writing that many offers? So we had an earlier start to the year. We had an early spring, at least in the real estate market. So we'll see if that's able to be sustained into the summer. Now, when I say sustained, I'm not talking about, oh my gosh, it's just the bottom's gonna drop off. It just might take a little bit of a breath. We might feel, a little less over asking. Maybe not every home is going over asking, but I do not think in any way that we're going to have a massive softening of the market. It would just be, honestly, at this point, a welcome, like half a breath.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you've exercised, right? Those moments between a set before you get right back into work. And nationwide statistics, I think I read, we are on pace to sell almost 6.5 million homes nationwide. Now, for context, we're typically around 5 to 5.5 million homes sold nationwide. So that pace, again, it's not just Denver, it is happening nationwide. That's a rapid pace. I'm curious to see how the next 6 months are basically going to go. Again, my prediction, this isn't land title, it's just my interpretation of the data. I think things are going to slow down as we enter the back half of this year, to where we're going to see homes sitting on the market just a little bit longer. Now, does that mean that the market's shifting and, oh my God, if you didn't already sell, you've missed the boat? Or if you haven't bought, just wait because this bubble's going to pop? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. We're talking about it's a little bit of a breath. Things slow down a little bit from a breakneck 100-yard pace to a slower pace, but honestly still moving fast because of the limited inventory.
Yeah, to use your workout analogy, we're going from doing supersets to an active rest. So it's just a little bit of an adjustment that will probably feel a lot nicer, but in no way is just going to be a complete stall. So, and then as far as the market is compared, sold units are up 15.4% year to date. So that is January through the end of April. I'm not surprised to see that because, again, the beginning of March was when COVID really started to take hold. So we'll see what happens in this back half, if it kind of evens out from last year, if we surpass what that looks like. There's a lot of unknowns in this COVID world that we're living in. So it's interesting to see how all of this is going to play out. So this is the snapshot that we look at every month. It's our market snapshot, and this one is detached and attached combined. So active is green, blue or under contract is blue is pending or under contract, and red is sold. So what you'll see is that green line, the active line, it's been going down, 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 down. And then we just have that little blip up that we talked about, that 14.7%. It's still 69% down year over year, which we talked about a little bit, why some of that may be. But you can see we still have a massive gap between our active listings and where our pendings and solds are. But what you will see a little bit here, if you're looking at the pendings and solds, if you look at that line, pendings and solds have been going up considerably. They're still going up, but they've just leveled off a little bit. So it's more of a rounder curve than like a 14 or peak. But when you take a look at this, 2020 is the anomaly, right? It doesn't really follow any of our trend lines. But when you push back to 2019 on the left-hand side, we're closer in the ballpark as far as pending and solds go for this time of year. So those shapes look more similar to what we're used to. The big outlier, obviously, which is driving the speed and intensity of the market, is in 2019, the green line was significantly above, and now we are significantly below. So, we are about 8,000 homes different in that swing of about 2 years.
Yeah, it's a big gap, and as we see that green line sustain under the red and blue lines, the inventory levels are not immediately going to correct themselves, right? There's a lot of homeowners that may be still sitting on the sidelines and not putting their homes, their properties on the market. We would need to see a dramatic slowdown in buyer demand, or just a mass amount of inventory hitting the market. Now, some of the conversations that I've heard, right, kind of around the water cooler is, well, this forbearance thing is going to go away. So all of a sudden, we're just going to have a flood of homes hit the market, and there's going to be deals to be had. Now, I would say in every market, there's going to be deals to be had. You just have to look a little harder sometimes in different markets. I don't think the forbearance is going to be something that comes around and just throws a whole bunch of properties onto the market. Again, somewhere else that I read, Colorado has the lowest forbearance rate in the nation, right? So when we look at how many homes are in that scenario, right, there's not very many. And a lot of those folks are already paying back, what was owed during that time that they were in forbearance. Some of those folks have already decided to sell, and that's alleviated some of that, potential just flood into the market. Again, not what I'm expecting to see. Again, don't have a crystal ball. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? But, for those that are saying, well, just hold on because we're about to see a big flood of homes and you can buy them super cheap. It's not what the data is telling us.
No, and thankfully for Colorado, we've had a really strong market for several years now. So most people have a considerable amount of equity in their homes, to where if they were in that position where they were in forbearance, they have about 15 grand of equity that they're needing to pay off either on the second or attached to the end of their loan. They're able to do that with the equity that they have, or when they're selling off their home, they're able to pay that off and still make a profit. So, which is a great position to be in. But again, it's not going to help our inventory situation.
Yeah. And for those that are watching that are curious about the forbearance piece, stay tuned, because Thursday this week, I'm going to be jumping on live again, Facebook, with Mitch Friedman to talk about forbearances. What's happening? What are we seeing? What does this mean as we start coming out of the forbearance piece around COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this is detached single family. It looks fairly similar to detached and attached combined. But if we jump over to attached single family, you'll see a little bit of a difference. So the attached market has been, again, I'm using this word in context, but softer than our detached market, especially in Denver County specifically, just with that flight to the suburbs of people wanting some grass, some more space, so they can have their meetings in different rooms. But we are seeing a little bit of a bounce back there. But you will notice that this month, from March to April, our solds ticked down. Now, solds are a lagging indicator. Our pendings are showing that they are up month over month. So I would anticipate seeing those solds pump back up once we get our May data. So it's strengthening. It's not quite as extreme of a gap between that active and then the pendings and solds as we see in the detached and the combined slides, but it is potentially some different opportunity areas, relatively speaking, when you're looking at the whole market.
Yeah, very different pieces and components, right? So when we look at the 30,000 foot view of what's happening with real estate, that doesn't mean that every single home is in that same scenario, right? When we take a look at the granular data for attached versus detached, we break it down into specific neighborhoods and even specific homes. There are some homes that are sitting on the market. There's one in particular in North Glen that for one of my buyers' searches, I've seen this home for months sitting on the MLS. Now, I've not been in the home. I can tell you there's probably work that needs to be done. What I can tell you for sure is that if it's still sitting on the market right now, it is overpriced, right?
Well, people are very aware of value right now. And they're very aware, for the most part, that they're going to have to be competitive and they're going to have to bid over. So when people are pushing to the top of their price point and then going into reserves to even get the home, it scares them a little bit more to have to say, oh, well, now I have to replace the carpets and now I have to do this and now I have to do that. And people are definitely doing that in order to get the home. But if they have the choice between a home that's nicely staged and looks great, and they walk in and they're like, hey, this is ready to roll, versus another home that they're still going to have to pay probably over asking and put some cash into, I mean, that's a pretty easy conversation. So I think just remembering, as you're a seller, especially in the market, you can price aggressively, but it is still really important to price within the market, and to do that homework on the front end of getting your home ready to sell, taking professional photos, getting the staging done, and putting your best foot forward. Because yes, it's competitive. Yes, your home will sell, but for how much is still dependent, as it always is, on how it's presented.
Yeah, without a doubt, right? Value is a very subjective thing, and we as people tend to associate value with context. What else have we seen that in context, right? This compared to that, and that's how we determine value. And had an interesting conversation with some buyers recently, several buyers actually, about normally when we're shopping for something, let's say we're shopping for a car online, or we're shopping for a new purse, a new pair of shoes, take your pick, whatever it is that you want to be shopping for. We're usually looking for, what has a really great price, because we're conditioned to, well, I could just buy it at that price. Right now with real estate, we almost have to flip that. If you're looking to not be as competitive, if you're looking to get it at a little bit of a discount, and go look for the one that looks like it's overpriced. It looks like it doesn't have the value there because the other buyers are seeing it as well. And let's say that, they started $20,000 or $25,000 high over where the market would bring, and they haven't brought the market or the price down to catch in line with the market. But the next door neighbor listed their home and they got 30 or 40 or 50 or sometimes $100,000 over their list price. Well, gosh, that one now, it's $20,000 too high. Sure seems like a deal. If you walked into a scenario where the neighbor just had to pay $100,000 over, you're in a situation where you have $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 worth of equity potentially, right? So looking for the ones that are just, again, online, it looks like that's an overpriced property. That might actually be the deal.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, so this is our active inventory. This is detached and attached combined. So this line right here is 5,000, and then the line here at the top is 10,000. And so we're down here at 2,400 combined. So if we were in a balanced market, the National Association of Realtors says we'd have probably about 40 to 50,000 homes. Here in Denver, probably closer to that, like 20 or 30,000 homes. So this line is 10,000. So if you would go to like the top of this slide, that would probably be 20,000. And that would just be kind of starting to reach that balanced market. And we're all the way down here at 2,400. But we did have a little uptick, like we talked about, for 318 more homes than we did last month. And the new homes are coming on the market. They're just being absorbed quicker than they're being put on. So this is the first month in a long time that we've had more active listings than new listings, for them not being completely just absorbed by the buyers that have been looking for homes for months.
Yeah, and to circle back to that point, let's say, in Denver, between 20 and 30,000 homes to balance the market. So we're talking about the absorption rate. So how many buyers are in the market and how fast homes are getting accumulated, right? So we're about 1/10 of the inventory to have a balanced market. Oh my goodness, to have 22,000 homes hit the market all at once to get balanced, and all of a sudden the bubbles popped and all of that's just not likely to happen. In fact, if we went back historical data to 2000 and 5, 6, 7, and 8, as the real estate market did burst that bubble, it wasn't quite as dramatic of just a flood of inventory that came onto the market that caused it. Again, things happen slowly and then happen very, very quickly, right? So very, very low inventory still when we take a look at just where we're at with active inventory.
Yeah, and if you look at this bottom left-hand corner, we do break it down into county. We talked a little bit about that on our first slide, the highlight reel. But you can see, obviously, Broomfield with only 35 active listings is extremely competitive. Now, Broomfield is a smaller county than some of the other ones, but they also have relied heavily on their new build situation, just because it's a newer area. And as most of you know, new builds are really struggling, right? Well, they're doing great, but new builds are difficult as well, because the labor and the materials to complete those homes is significantly lacking. So we're seeing builders that are increasing their base price every 2 to 3 sales. We're seeing wait lists and just a lot of things. But if you can get into a new build, we also have people that before they even move into their home, they have several $1,000s worth of equity from when they locked in their price to when they're moving in. Typically, when the market gets tough, people don't want to compete. New builds are a great option. And that's been taken off the table a little bit just with availability, with some of the other issues going on right now with lumber in particular and just labor. So that's something across the board, but I think definitely in Broomfield, we're seeing that. Elbert County is a small county as well, but we do include it there. But you can see, I mean, even in Denver at 908, that's still not a ton for all of Denver County.
Yeah, and when we look at the year-over-year change from where we were this time last year, now again, April of last year was kind of, COVID really kind of reared its ugly head for us in the States in March, right? The conversations were happening long before that, but it really became a big topic, right? And kind of some concern, some uncertainty in March. And as we get to April, right, things were being shut down. Schools were closing down. You couldn't go get a haircut. If we go back to the videos from last year, right, that curly hair of mine just kind of going crazy. So when we look at that year over year change, we are still dramatically, there's not a single number in those counties that is below 62% down in inventory. again, dramatically reduced inventory levels from where we were. And again, if you're visual looking at that graph, it just shows where we were this time last year.
So if we look back just on the shape, typically as we get into May, June, July, August, we have a little bit of a buildup of inventory. We talked about this before, but that didn't happen last year. So that's really hurting us on any kind of reserve of inventory that we would have. But if we're following the general trend, even if it's a lot lower of a curve, we would anticipate to see a little bit more inventory come on the market as we get into those summer months. Kids are out of school. The grass looks good. It's not snowing. Hopefully, I'm over it. So hopefully that number continues to go up even slightly to just follow that trend line a little bit more than what it did last year.
Yeah, right. You were born in Florida, not quite ready for all of the snow and the snow to be continuing into mid-May.
Yeah. And I know Colorado, I know it happens every year, and every year I'm surprised, but it's okay. So I don't want to belabor the point of inventory, but just so you can see, we are at about 2 weeks of inventory for detached and attached. And, as we talk about National Association of Realtors in that balanced market, it would be about 6 months for National Association of Realtors or about 4 months for the Denver Economist, what they say. So obviously we're very, very short there.
And for those that aren't good at math, right, we're at about 2 weeks, 6 months worth of inventory, right? We're looking at what's that, 26 weeks for the National Association of Realtors, standard for 6 months worth of inventory, right? That's a lot of weeks of inventory we just don't have.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we break it down by county. So depending on where you're looking, I know a lot of people are just having to look outside basically for anything and not staying within a smaller area like we typically do when we're looking for a home. But if you're interested, it's there on that left-hand side. But something that I wanted to chat about, and Matt, stop me if you want to talk about any of these days in MLS. It's the speed of the market. It's still really fast. That's what we've been talking about. But this is pretty incredible. Incredible, scary, whatever you want to call it. So month supply of inventory versus the days on the market. So we talked about that balanced market being at about 4. So we don't get to a balanced market until we're over 3 million in price point. So typically, we've been in a seller's market for several years now, but typically when we get into that luxury market, things slow down. And luxury, depending on where you are, it used to be about 7. Obviously now with that being the average price point in Douglas County, we're seeing closer to that 1 million. In Boulder County, the average price point is about 1 million. So luxury is more maybe now like 2 million. But up to 3 million, we're still seeing a shortage in inventory, and we're seeing things move pretty darn quickly. And that's pretty incredible. So that speaks to a lot of money in Colorado, a lot of money coming from the coast, from California, from Oregon, from New York. When people are now able to basically choose where they live and keep their jobs, they're coming here. So this is something we haven't seen as significantly in a while, and it just kind of makes me shake my head a little bit. But it's a pretty interesting statistic.
Yeah, without a doubt, right? And I'm thinking of something that's come up in recent conversations: the for sale by owner individuals. Right now, a for sale by owner can absolutely find a buyer in this market, and some of them are going to want to wait until they find the right buyer. Right, the right buyer just hasn't come along. When we look at these average days in the multiple listing service, the reason why these are going to go so much faster than what you might see in a for sale by owner is because your serious buyers are working with an agent. They're working through the multiple listing service. That's where they're going. And that's why these are so much faster. So, when we look at getting it to the masses and creating that high demand, yeah, there's a high demand. Some homeowners can decide to go through the headache of trying to sell it on their own. What we create in the demand here by getting it to the largest pool of buyers, the largest pool of well-qualified buyers, are these results that we're kind of seeing and we're talking about, right? The way over list price, the very, very short days, so that, right, you can move in your timeline.
Well, and I think right now it seems like for a seller, this is a very easy market. But as I've talked to agents on both sides, they are just so grateful when they have that professional realtor on the other side, because we're dealing with clauses we haven't seen in a while. We're dealing with appraisal gaps and different things that take some finesse and some nuance. And if you're dealing with someone that is not what they do every day and they just want to sell their home, that can be a nightmare for the buyer's agent as well as all the other parties involved. So working with professionals right now, I think, is extremely important. It's always important, but contrary to maybe what may be your first thought, I think it's even more important now with the speed, the intensity of the market, and to be honest, buyers are a little less forgiving right now, I think, because they have worked so hard to get the home. They don't want to mess around. So having someone that knows what you're doing, knows what they're doing, is extremely important to make sure not only that you get under contract, but you get to the closing table.
Yeah, without a doubt, right? Finding a buyer who's willing to give you a contract, right, to give you an offer on the property is one thing. The price point of it is one line on I don't know how many lines are on the total contract, but it's like 17 pages long, right? The price is one line. There's so many different moving components and nuances to it. And to your point, some of the clauses that we're seeing or would see, or if then scenarios, right? Again, I'm biased. I'm a real estate agent. This is my profession. Brenna, you're not a real estate agent. You have been in the past. You're in the title industry. So it's connected to real estate, but not exclusive to people using a real estate agent, right? Very, very critical to have great representation on your side because of all of the different challenges that might come on both sides, right, within this market.
Absolutely. Okay, let's see here. So this is just break it down again. So this is our sold analysis. So like I mentioned before, for March and April, if you look back historically, typically we don't see those over 5,000 until later in the summer. And we basically, since March, and I mean, even February was stronger than it has been, but we got faster quicker. So if we'll follow that line like we saw in 2019, we'll see, will buyers fatigue earlier? Do we have the inventory to continue to support the solds? These are all kind of questions people are asking when we're trying to determine what's going to happen for the rest of the summer. Matt, I'm not going to make any predictions, but people that I respect and talk to, including you, have echoed that they do think that there is going to be a little bit of a slowdown this summer as people, a little bit more inventory comes up. Buyers are a little bit worn out. And also, honestly, if you're like me, you're so excited to have summer and get out and go camping and go on vacations, that people are going to just take a break a little bit and enjoy the summer that we didn't get in the same capacity last year. So if you need to sell this summer, I think that's still great. And you're still going to get good money for your home. It might just be a little bit softer than it has been this last couple of months.
Well, we think about the folks that have gone through this buying process and this bidding process, and just let me throw everything in my Broncos season tickets, and I'm going to bake you a cake and all of these crazy offers. When we get moving forward, when it starts to balance out, and at some point I believe it will, I don't believe this is going to continue forever. At some point when that starts to balance out, you may not list your home and get the $100,000 over, or the $50,000 over, or even $5,000 over. But you can thank your neighbor that bought the home that did, because that has now become the comparable property for pricing yours. And now we know that's what the market kind of brings for that neighborhood. So somebody might have thrown a crazy offer over on it. and maybe your home doesn't list and sell quite as much as theirs did, but gosh, what a rapid appreciation just in a heartbeat for yours. So, right, you can thank them because you're already kind of counting on that price, even though you may not get the way over. Think about it though. If you would have listed where they did, you would end up at that same number. Just start at that number now.
Yeah, and to your point of things moving quickly and the appreciation, month over month, we're at $26,000 appreciation, and year over year. And again, this is a little bit inflated because of COVID, but $145,000 month or year over year appreciation. So Matt and I were talking a few days ago, and I said, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the best time to buy a house in Denver? 20 years ago. Things are moving very quickly and continuing to go up. Even when we have these little bit of a wave of that seasonality, the general trajectory is up and steeper than the rest of the country, the average of the rest of the country, rather. But then it becomes an issue of I talk to people and they say, man, my neighborhood is appreciating so much, I couldn't afford to buy here now. So then we have the conversation of affordability. The appreciation in our homes does help offset that affordability a little bit when you're able to put more of your equity down to offset that payment. But for first-time homebuyers, that becomes a really difficult thing to get into this market in a lot of our spaces and a lot of the markets when you don't have that equity and you're trying to keep up with this rapid appreciation.
Yeah, right. And as a first-time home buyer, somebody that doesn't have the massive budget, you may have to get a little bit more creative, and maybe it's buying something that you don't love. It's not the forever dream home today, right? It's that first home that gets you the opportunity to get to the second home, that gets you the opportunity to get to that third, fourth, whatever that is, right? Real estate appreciates over time. Historically, that's what occurs, right? They're not making any more land, right? It's not going away. We have 7 billion people on the planet versus 6 billion, however many years ago, right? The population growth, this is going to be something that overall should very well continue, right? So then when we look at that $145,000 appreciation, if you were a homeowner over the last year, just over the last year, and your home appreciated $145,000, and you're paying your mortgage every month, that balance is going down, your equity position just grew massively, right? And that's a great component to homeownership. I mean, when we look at building wealth through homeownership, this is a great thing. And for those that are watching, if you're curious what your home's worth today, specifically your home, right? Give me a call, shoot me an email, right? We will pull the data and tell you what your home's worth today and show you, right, historically over, the year before, the year before that, what was it worth? And what's this investment been for you over time?
And it's kind of a double-edged sword because we have a lot of people that are saying, "Oh, I don't want to spend that much. I'm going to wait, or I don't want to go that much over asking price, so I'm just going to see what else comes on." Well, you're now paying $26,000 just 1 month later for the same home. So going that extra $5,000 over last month doesn't seem like such a bad deal. Now, you still don't want to spend outside of what you're comfortable with. But if your goal is to get a home and you have a little bit more money, you just don't want to spend it, you either probably need to readjust your expectations or take a look and see that things are going up. They're continuing to go up. So every month that you wait, you're taking the chance that interest rates might go up and then your money isn't as cheap. And we're continuing to appreciate at a very quick pace. And you might be paying more for less.
Yeah, and it was interesting, and had a conversation with a buyer a couple of months ago who mentioned that the prices have just gone so high so fast that he'd almost rather pay a higher interest rate than pay the higher price. So I told him, I said, look, if you break down the math and the numbers, you would actually end up paying the same amount whether the interest rate was 1% higher as you would if the home was 10% more money, right? If it's 2% higher, you can add 20% there to that number. That math holds true pretty much at every price point. So, to want to pay less for the purchase price, but to pay more in interest doesn't really work when we just run the math, right? Now, there's so many other outside factors that it doesn't quite break down that same way, right? Because if interest rates drop, and you could refinance, but that's kind of beside the point. Your cost of ownership, right? There's a lot of factors that we have to take into account when it comes to just waiting and saying, well, gosh, if I just wait until fill in the blank, if I just wait until fill in the blank, you may wait yourself out of an opportunity for home ownership.
Yeah.
And the net worth, right? What somebody's net worth is, their financial net worth for a homeowner versus a renter. Average renter net worth is $5,000, right? The average homeowner's net worth is $230,000. Right? That's not just because wealthier people can buy homes, right? It's simply because of the mechanism that real estate allows when it comes to a financial investment.
Yeah, that's a great point. And definitely something, this is attached, but I think it's always worth having the conversation with your lender, with your agent, what that looks like, what the plan is for you. I know when I bought my first house, it was only 2013, and it definitely wasn't something that I loved. I loved it because it was mine, but it appreciated $100,000 in under 3 years, and I was able to use that equity to buy another home. So, that was really cool, that feeling, and just knowing that I wasn't paying someone else's mortgage. I had a roommate, so she was helping me pay my mortgage. So there's some options there for sure. But I mean, this market is challenging. And even here in our attached, we're starting to pick up speed. You could see that the lines were a little bit less dramatic, and then last month our solds shot up. So it's bouncing back as well. Unless you're in Denver County in the luxury space, we have a little bit more opportunity deals, if you will, but they're not lasting long. So if you're looking for a condo downtown, get it now. Because I do think that Denver's going to come back. I think I mentioned last time the Rockies opening day was awesome to see. I think as soon as the fountains turn on at Union Station, then we'll really be back in business. But things are starting to open up, and people are starting to come back. Those people that love the city are starting to come back.
Well, and not to belabor the point, when we talk about home ownership and getting into a home, I firmly believe there's not a bad time to get into real estate, to buy a property. I don't think that there's a bad time to do that. I think that even in a much different market, right, in a buyer's market, it can be the wrong time to buy a bad deal, right? To buy beyond your means, to extend way beyond what you can afford. Real estate is one of those components that if you can afford to keep it, as long as you can afford to keep it, you'll never end up losing on that property, right? The appreciation over time will cover a lot of mistakes potentially, but certainly never going to advocate somebody buy beyond their means. If this is beyond your means and you can't afford to make the mortgage payment, you can't afford to make the mortgage payment, right? Just taking that leap to say, hey, maybe I'll make more money. That's probably not a sound investment, right? But if you can afford to keep it, great. Let's get into it. Let's get into the game. Let's ride that appreciation maybe to that next property or that dream property.
Yeah. Who are all those people that bought in the Highlands when you were like afraid to cross the street, and now you're sitting pretty, right? So, it's hard to always see where those opportunity areas are. We just did a report with all of the Denver sub areas and their different appreciation. And some of it's pretty incredible of some of these neighborhoods and what's going on. But for the most part, we talk about all the time, we don't have a crystal ball. We have some indication of maybe where the next areas may be, but we don't know until they're already going that way sometimes as well. So sometimes you just get lucky.
Yeah, kind of finding those areas to get into where people want to be, and that's probably a whole nother topic for another time.
Absolutely.
So, well, perfect. Well, again, this is always insightful as we take a look at the data. Brenna and I are very passionate about being the resource for the right information, right? Your neighbor, your coworker, they might be really great at what it is that they do. Let us be good at what we do and interpret the data, because sometimes the stories out there scare people away from making a decision that may be the right decision for them. And sometimes the decisions don't sell. Sometimes the decisions don't buy. Either one of those are okay. Except honestly, right now we need more people to sell. So if you're on the fence, please sell your home, right? We need the inventory. Cool. So Brenna, any final kind of parting words as we wrap up our review of April 2021's real estate numbers?
No, I don't think so. I think that, like always, we can pull down to the county and neighborhood level. So if you have specific questions on something, let Matt know and I can help you get that data. But I think just educating yourself before you enter and this is what we're trying to do. So you know what you're walking into. So you're a little less shocked at what's going on. If you're prepped and ready on the list side or the buy side, it will be a better experience for everyone, and that's really our intention. So, if you have questions, just give us a call. Happy to help however we can, and please sell your home.
Well, and I think now that I think this week's supposed to be rainy. I believe that the snow's behind us. I think we're headed in for probably no spring. It's just going to get to 90 to 100 degrees probably overnight, which Brenna loves. Not going down that path. Not my deal. So anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, you can always find these on our YouTube channel. And we'll be back here next month for another update. Again, check in Thursday for Facebook Live, because I'm going to be joined with my friend Mitch Friedman with Pivot Lending Group as we talk about the forbearance piece. So again, Brenna, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
You're welcome. We'll see you next month, everyone.